Welcome to the GMC June membership meeting. I'm Greg Marcus, President and CEO of the Marcus Corporation. And I'd like to start today by welcoming the guests we have in the room today and acknowledging those who are viewing live stream. I also want to start by sharing some feedback we got last. We've instituted this idea of we want feedback surveys on what you think of these meetings, and good or bad, and what we can do to change them. And so, we sent it out at the end of the last meeting. We sent it right out afterwards, and we got some response, but we didn't get a ton of response, but it was some good response, and I'll share a little bit of that with you. But I do think it's important that we get regular feedback on these meetings. And so one of the things, we're going to try something new today. As you can see, at the middle of every table, and I think it will be on the email that goes out, right, Heather? Is that on wherever Heather is? There, on the email it'll be as well, and it's on the screens here. There's a QR code. And since you're eating, you know it's not for your menu. But since everybody seems to know how to use QR codes now, let's use a QR code. So what we'd like you to do is, after the meeting, if you hit that QR code link, it will take you to the survey. The survey takes all of 30 seconds if you go slowly, maybe a minute if you give us some feedback, because we're just asking on a scale of 1 to 10 to rate the survey. But then also, what ideas do you have if you didn't give us a 10? Some of the feedback we got from the last meeting, although it's a small sample, it centered around the idea of shaking things up a bit. Some members would welcome a different format than the speaker and panel model, many of us have grown accustomed to. Maybe a different time, more interaction, real-time polling, more community, chance to network. These are some of the suggestions that we got, and we can't incorporate every suggestion, but my feeling is the more people that give us feedback, the better ideas we're going to get, and we'll make these meetings, continue to be more meaningful and value-added for our membership. So while today's meeting includes a number of different presenters and a brief panel discussion, we're going to actively work on ways to engage you in the consideration of really important other ways to engage you in the consideration of really important community issues. But the best way to get us to do that is to give us your good ideas and to rate us, and I will just keep hitting home on that. Just give us a rating after the meeting. So take a minute after the conversations today. Today's meeting has a theme of community and civic engagement throughout. We'll hear from members Patrick Rath and David Lubar on projects they're involved with before diving deeper into ARPA funds and the unique opportunity these funds create. So let's jump right in. I invite Joel Brennan to share GMC initiative updates to begin the meeting. Welcome, Joel.
Thanks, Greg, and welcome everybody. I'm going to dive in. We have a number of speakers and a number of presenters today, so I'm going to give an update of kind of where we are on some of the GMC initiatives, and then we'll get into the rest of the program. We'll start with our economic prosperity. People are familiar certainly with Scale Up. Scale Up Milwaukee is currently hosting its 8th cohort, or will be, of Growth Accelerator 8 this summer, serving businesses with revenues approaching and in excess of $1 million. Historically, the companies that have completed the accelerator programs project about 45% revenue growth and have hired 1,400 people from our local community. You see on the screen feedback from one of those participants. Our MK United team is certainly progressing its work with a series of summer placemaking community events to create a space for residents to have meaningful conversations about social issues, influence neighborhood healing, and provide access and connection with resources resource providers and similar mission-driven organizations. The first of these is going to be held at Moody Park in the Amani neighborhood, upcoming on June the 25th. The park will be activated throughout with activities for all ages, including a panel discussion, a resource fair, live entertainment, and a neighborhood art installation. This is just another example of the results that we get and the importance of having residents guide our approach to addressing systemic challenges within Milwaukee neighborhoods and the Milwaukee community. Along with Employ Milwaukee, MK United later this fall will launch the Appraiser Diversity Pilot to address inequities in the housing market. Program participants will receive paid training to engage full-time in the program, diversifying the pipeline into appraisal careers, with the ultimate intent of addressing how the workforce affects neighborhood residential values in Milwaukee. Most of our program today is around ARPA, and this is a program that was a recipient of some of these ARPA dollars. So the GMC itself is putting some of these dollars to work. In the area of innovation and talent, the GMC and Hone Group recently finished another cohort of Forward 48, our region's premier leadership development program for young professionals. Thank you to many of you in this room who have lent your time, resources, and knowledge to the success of this program, either this year or in years past. Forward 48 is creating a diverse civic succession plan for our community, focusing on economic growth and civic impact. I happened to be in the audience for a couple of these conversations, including the final conversation with Thelma Sias a few weeks ago. And I think I was with Ellen Gilligan this morning, and she mentioned that Thelma is either the only or one of the people who gets invited back year after year and program after program. Why? Because she's Thelma, and if you have had an opportunity to experience her and to see her engagement with this, you understand why. And it was a moving experience, but it was just so relevant and so important and of such impact to the people who were present there. And that just is one of the number of speakers that we had this year and presenters, and we are excited to continue that moving forward. In the vibrancy of place, we're excited to announce the continued progress on the Beer Line Trail and a campaign theme for the Beeline Park that will be connecting communities. Beeline Park is the catalyst for creative placemaking, fosters inclusion, equity, economic development, community-based programming. Among many amenities, the Beeline Park, the 1 mile stretch, will be part of the existing Beer Line Trail. The linear park will connect the Harambe and River West neighborhoods, provide a critical link for the future planned expansion of the trail to the north side of Milwaukee and into Glendale. The logo was designed with feedback of residents, and the campaign theme represents the collaborative effort from the community. We're continuing to be thankful for our deep partnership with the Riverworks Development Corporation on the Beer Line Trail, and we are excited about the progress that continues to be made on that campaign. On the personnel front, we're excited to welcome a new team member to the GMC starting on June 20th. Laura Bolger will join us as the Director of Resource Development. Laura has a successful career in development in places like Marquette University, Alverno College. We believe she's going to make a great addition to our team. Finally, we won't have a full membership meeting for the next few months, as is customary at the GMC during the summer months. However, in the spirit of continuing to connect and trying new things, we will invite past members of the Education Committee, other interested members, to take part in a discussion of the things that are happening in the Milwaukee community around early childhood education in July. There will be participation from a couple of my former state colleagues, Emily Amundsen, who's the head of the Department of Children and Families, Missy Hughes, who's the head of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, as well as some people on the ground doing really exciting work here on early childhood education. Much of the discussion today, as I mentioned, will be around ARPA funding. There are funds out there, federal funds out there, to dramatically change the early learning landscape, and there's lots of great work going on the ground here, and we hope to continue that and to inform that discussion moving forward in that meeting in July. We will send out the details for that later this week. Now I'm going to introduce our first guest speakers today, Patrick Rath, who's the president and CEO of UPAF, and Mark Niehaus, who's the president and executive director of the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra. We've invited him here today to share a brief update on UPAF's annual campaign. We all know that COVID-19 took a toll on all of us, and I think for many of us, the absence of the arts for some period of time during that only shed even more of a light on the importance of the arts in our community, the important tie between the arts and economic development, the tie between the arts and education. UPAF's annual campaign is supporting the opportunity for everyone to have a meaningful connection to the arts and creating and sustaining a diverse and vibrant arts culture in Milwaukee. So I would welcome Patrick and Mark to take the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Patrick, and this is my wonderful colleague, Mark Niehaus of the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra. And we're here just to give you a little bit of a snapshot of what the last year has been. But for us to give a snapshot of last year, it's really in context over the last several years, because the performing arts have been going through, for us, an unprecedented time frame, and the overall impact of that continues. With that, what we've been facing, and this is a little bit about the performing arts itself and the impact that we have overall in this great community of ours. Our UPAF's 14 member organizations like the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra, collectively each year have over $60 million of annual revenue that's reinvested back in the community with the spirit that we have with all these great arts performances. We have over 700,000 attendees as well as educational activities throughout the community. To put that in perspective, that is equal to the number of people who have gone to a home Bucks game at Fiserv Forum, our championship Milwaukee Bucks, this last year. So as great as our Bucks are, we have great activities happening downtown year-round through the performing arts. And last but not least, over $80 million, and that number is very much on the low side in terms of economic impact that those performances do have in our community. As we look at this last season, there have been potential challenges, but what we've been able to do, last year when I came to you, I was sharing the fact that we were completely closed down. We could have no more than 10 people in a performance venue at that point in time. That changed for us come June, but most of our performance season was done at that point. So much of our planning had to be focused on the future and the 2022-2023 seasons and went forward. So as we see here, some great performances by Tony Stone, Milwaukee Rep, the Nutcracker, and of course, first stage, Watson's Go to Birmingham. All of this was reflective of our community. What the performing arts continue to do is give us a space to have empathy, to connect, to share a story. And we did that more than any time this past year. And wonderful activities as well. Each of our cornerstone members provided a sensory-friendly performance for the first time in our history, seeing that across all of our members, as well as sign language presented performances at all of our theater productions. The Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra's performance with sensory performance activities was one of the best ever that I've experienced, and to see families coming together in such joy and being welcomed is exactly what we need with the performing arts. So where are we heading as we go forward? So as we look back here of our past several years and what we're facing, I'm going to work from the bottom up. This past year, we've had over 80 canceled performances due to breakthrough COVID infections amongst our artists. It was important for us to have a safe environment, not only for those on stage, but those who are working behind the scenes as well. Whenever you see one person on stage, there's usually 5 or 10 that have their jobs behind the scenes, putting those productions together. We wanted to make sure it was not only a safe environment for them, but for also all of our attendees, and this led to those performances being canceled. When that happens, it's lost revenue, but still the expense stays. Our ticket sales, compared to pre-pandemic, generally were about 20 to 50% lower than in prior years. This has a lot of things to do. There's macro elements that are happening right now. There's still, as we looked at our populations, we surveyed our attendees much. They said that I am not ready to come back. There was a certain percentage, even as we got into January and February, and that's when we were facing Omicron, that variant at that point in time. But this has continued through our season. Really, it's only been over the last month that we were able to see some of these attendance numbers go up. But then again, we had COVID breakthrough activities as well. So the Titanic musical, as many of you might have seen, if you have the chance to see it, it was fantastic by the Milwaukee Rep. They had to cancel 15 performances. They're thankfully bringing it back in the fall, and it's something you don't want to miss. Collective revenue loss, this is the last thing I'm going to touch on this slide, over $38 million since the start of our pandemic by our member organizations. This is both in the forms of ticket revenue as well as contributions. It is a major element that has held us back because our collective long-term resources weren't there at the level necessary to cover some of these time frames. With that $38 million, there was government support, one-time government support. I know we're talking about ARPA funding as well today. Very crucial to replace some of that revenue. But that was only about $26 million. It left about a $12 million gap, plus these other mounting losses that we've seen. In fact, this year, what we're going to see with all of our members, they have a $15 million gap between last year and this year. And all these wonderful organizations that create this cultural ecosystem in our community, the best in music, song, theater, and dance, most of them are facing a budget deficit for next year and do not have all the necessary resources to make that accomplishment to find their way past what we've been experiencing these last few years. It's just been too large of a dollar resource that's been taken off the table. So many of these organizations are facing $1 million deficits or more. We are looking at this still as a long-term solution. It's what we have today, but we need to go forward in a way that we can fix some of this funding model as we look to the future. With that, all what I can say is what we know and what we've been part of and proud to be part of is the performing arts for the last now 50, 60, 70, 80 years in our community. Milwaukee truly is ascending at this point in time. You see so much growth, be it new hotels, apartments, condominiums. We also see that through the expansion of our world-class convention center. All this is welcoming people back into our community. We still know there's some things that we have to recover from. We have only about 34% of people who are coming back downtown for work at this point in time. But the question is, what's the future of our community? And what are we going to have as we welcome people back? We don't believe it's a time for less. We believe it's a time for more. And with the performing arts, we know we can solve and be a part of many solutions that make this community not only great, but give more opportunities for people to come back. And one of the best examples I have is with our good friends here, Mark Niehaus, and the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra, and what they've done. Their bold initiatives over the last several years have made Milwaukee certainly a place that we all want to be a part of. Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for having me here. It's always great when someone from the arts and culture sector is part of these conversations. The Milwaukee Symphony Board used to meet in this room on a regular basis, and I can't tell you the number of conversations we had in this very spot about should we do this Bradley Symphony Center thing or not? And is this it's going to work? So for me, it's kind of full circle to come back and now brag a little bit about that. The building and the symphony are an unqualified success at this point. For those of you who have not visited yet, you owe it to yourselves to come hear the orchestra in our new space and see what's happened to West Wisconsin Avenue. The investment in the symphony has created a virtuous cycle up and down the avenue, and a lot of people like Grafe are on record as saying they moved down because the symphony was there, and our folks who are doing 3rd Street Market Hall likely would not have been as emboldened as they were without our investment in the neighborhood. But let's talk about the last couple of years for the arts. I'm going to talk about the symphony specifically, but this applies to all the groups in Milwaukee. It actually applies to every orchestra in the country. I just returned from Los Angeles. I was at the League of American Orchestras, the first in-person conference in, I think, 3 years, so there's a lot of hugging out there, and everyone has kind of the same story to tell, which was this season we had cash reserves because last season our expenses went way down because we didn't do programming and government support was way up. So last season we were taken care of. But we also did a lot of damage to our organizations in the contraction that we put ourselves through. The symphony went from being a $17 million organization to an $11 million organization. But now in the Bradley Symphony Center we're a $21 million organization, and there's no government support this season. That's gone. And our attendance is suppressed, exactly as Patrick said. We're at about 60 to 65% capacity. That's very low for us, especially because the Bradley Symphony Center has less seats than the Marcus Center did. So we're actually at 50% numbers of people we used to have. And this is across the sector. And it's and across the country too. Anybody want to talk to my son? How about no? So I really appreciate you all and hearing our story and knowing that everyone, what has happened across the sector, the creativity in all the groups, in the rep, and the ballet, and the opera, doing interesting things to keep the artists going. The symphony made infusion payments to our musicians at the darkest times to make sure they had income. We kept their health insurance going the whole time. Our education department pivoted to fully virtual. 70,000 kids in Wisconsin saw Milwaukee Symphony content while they were learning at home. And so we really all did a great job of pivoting. But it's going to take a tremendous capital infusion now at this point to make sure the arts are able to survive because of use of the damage that we saw in earned revenue. Our contributed revenue, I mean, we may be bucking the trend a little bit. Our contributed revenue is up. The belief in this, every year has gone up for the last 3 years of the symphony. We've set a fundraising record every year. So people believe in us, but it's our earned income that we can't replace. So we may show a deficit this year between 2 to 3, maybe even 4 million, depending on how fundraising goes. That's the reality for us right now. And I just wanted to let you guys know that. And we're also going to be looking into ARPA funding to see what can happen for our sector too. So I'm very curious to hear the other speakers. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Mark. And just a final comment. I know I'm somewhat preaching to the choir. Many of you are involved with member organizations. You've served as past co-chairs of the United Performing Arts Fund campaign. You've given back in so many ways. We encourage you, if you haven't, come back to the performances, buy a ticket, be a part of next year's subscription drive. Right now, the UPAF campaign stands a little over $8 million towards our $10.5 million goal. We'd love to work with you, have this infusion back. And last but not least, as Mark talked about, we'll be sharing more about that long-term solution because recapitalization is a priority, not only for the near term here, but it's going to mean the generational difference for the arts in our community. So thank you as always for your support, and thank you for this time.
Thanks, Patrick and Mark. And if I'll just make my quick pitch for this, which is the performing arts are one of our crown jewels in our community. And for someone who would say, well, you know, why should I support the arts? I don't go to any of these shows. Well, you know, it's the same thing. I give the same exact answer to someone who says, I don't go to the Bucks games, so I shouldn't support the Forum. Or I don't go to the parks, so I shouldn't pay taxes for the parks. Or my kids aren't in school, so I shouldn't pay taxes for for schools. It's about quality of life. And it's about drawing people to our community. And it's about making sure, you know, if you have trouble hiring, well, it's a little bit less hard if there's reasons to come live here. And the arts are one of the reasons people come live here, just as the Bucks are, just as schools can be, or as parks are, or any of the different quality of life assets we have. So this is the oldest, or the biggest community-based performing arts group in the fund in the country. And so please give it your support. Now I'd like to introduce David Lubar, President and CEO of Lubar & Company, and Claire Woodall-Vaugh, Executive Director of the City of Milwaukee Election Commission, to share the importance of civic engagement and the role of business leaders. David and Claire.
So I'm David, and this is Claire. No, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. So I'm presenting as a member of the Wisconsin Business Leaders for Democracy. This group consists of business leaders who, like each of you, are CEOs or members of senior management teams of for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. We are nonpartisan. Our members are both Democrats and Republicans. Wait, let's, oops. Yeah, I'll do the slides. Okay.
The first slide's having a little bit of an issue.
Okay, all right, thanks. So the leadership of this group consists of Tom and John Florsheim, Betsy Brenner, our member right here, Corey Nettles, Anoop Prakash, David Irwin, Peter Fagan, and Sachin Shivaram. Our objectives are to advocate for safe and fair elections and to promote and encourage greater civic engagement. Some of you have participated in the calls and meetings we have had over the 15 or so past months. And similar efforts and activities are occurring across the country, not just here in southeastern Wisconsin. And there are several factors for this. So, oops.
It's just going to keep rotating.
Okay. All right, so I'll explain it without the slides. Okay, so what is this all about? Business leaders are concerned about the state of American democracy. And business leaders are more trusted than the government, than the media, and than politicians, according to the 2021 Edelman Trust Barometer, which is the preeminent poll about confidence in America. So a strong and stable democracy is good for our economy, which as business leaders means is good for our business. It's the basis for stable and reliable markets, which stable and reliable markets ensure greater access to capital at a lower cost. So a good democracy doesn't guarantee stable markets, but a lack of a good democracy guarantees an unstable market. 45 of the 50 largest companies in the world are located in countries with elected governments. And lastly, employees are asking more and more about their employers' policies regarding elections and voting. So as business leaders, what can you do? Okay, consider these options and activities. Number one, host voter registration days in your office or in your plant. Make it easier to vote. Encourage your employees to vote and give employees time off to vote. Provide your employees with voter information, namely how and where to register, rules on voter IDs, when and where to vote, and lastly, encourage your employees to serve as poll workers. In Milwaukee, Manpower created a program they call Operation Civic Duty, which covers all of these activities. And there are others around the country with similar programs. So what we're asking is for each of you to consider adopting at your business a similar program with your own version of Operation Civic Duty. And again, this is not about politics and who to vote for. And it's not about gerrymandering. It's not about drop boxes. It's not about the Wisconsin Election Commission. It is about facilitating greater participation in our democracy, which is about registering and then voting. And I'm bringing to your attention several key election dates. And if you look at what's happening with the primary, it's coming up not too far away. Election day is August 9th. Voter registration deadline is July 20th. So I know we all have a long list of high priorities and important tasks. This one actually has a somewhat short fuse. I hope you get engaged and will help promote voter registration and election. And let me now turn it over to Claire, who is Executive Director of the Election Commission for the City of Milwaukee, who can talk about some specifics.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm going to hope my slides work. Oh, good. So first, I just wanted to show how simple it can be to engage your employees. If you pull out your phones right now, you can confirm that you are registered to vote. You can also encourage your employees at meetings, in the lunchrooms, to simply confirm their voter registration. myvote.wi.gov has a plethora of information. You can request your absentee ballot, see your voting record, and it's really the most basic way to engage employees. The Election Commission is very committed to ensuring that our elections are as open and as transparent as possible. Part of this involves voter education. We are happy, if you are interested, to provide lunch and learn presentations. It could be training relevant staff on how to host a voter registration drive and what the relevant photo ID laws are. It could be how to adopt a polling place or become a poll worker. If you have a group of employees who want to work on election day together, some of our prominent law firms do this, like Foley and Quarles. We would love to have more election workers. During a time of great conspiracy theories, I think the greatest civic service that you can do is to work on election day. You can see how secure, how integral our volunteers are, but how everyone is committed to counting every single vote regardless of how you voted. And that is across the state. And then I am happy if you have a group, a board that would like to have a speaker on election integrity, election security, and election administration. I promise it's not super boring, but kind of pulling back the curtain to show people how elections actually work in our state. We also have educational materials that provide an overview of the voter process, voter registration, and poll worker information. We are happy to provide those. And then we also, if you are hosting a voter registration drive, we have a selfie station that you could set up where people can take a picture saying, confirmed I was registered to vote, or I registered to vote today, and then share on social media. My very last message is, how do your people reach my people? This next QR code, if you're sitting here thinking that some of these activities might be a great fit for your business, it takes you to a very short Microsoft form that will just ask for the contact person's name and then a short checklist of which activities you may be interested in. And then someone from my office will follow up within 3 days of submitting it. And then this link will also go out in the email afterwards. But we're really committed to trying to reinstate trust in elections. And we think that the way to do that is to get more people involved in the election process. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, David and Claire. Elections matter, and I think we all understand that. And so the topic we're going to talk about for the rest of the meeting here is around the federal response to COVID-19. I'm going to take you back just a little bit to March of 2020. I was still the Secretary of the Department of Administration, and overnight, and all of you had to do this in your own businesses, but overnight we had to send about 35,000 people who work for state government home. And at that point in March of 2020, we thought, my God, that may be the hardest thing we ever have to do. We're now a couple of years later, and all of us know, one, it's much harder to get those people back than it is to send them home. But also, we've lived through all the consequence of COVID-19 and all of the economic fallout. And so, now we have an opportunity with the funding that's coming into the city of Milwaukee and our region to really leverage those funds, and that's what today's conversation is going to be about. I spent a lot of time between that spring of 2020 and the end of 2021 when I left that role, really working on a lot of these federal programs and the federal dollars that were coming into the state of Wisconsin, and how could we leverage or use those funds in the right way. And really, we were operating without a playbook. All of us were during COVID-19. And so with this influx of federal funding, a lot of what we did was have conversations with stakeholders, some of whom are in the room today, and created new programs or created opportunities for us to get to places that had had an outsized impact on the economic fallout from COVID-19. Because, as we all know, unlike previous recessions, this was not broad scale. This was not across every sector in the economy. But if you were in the arts, if you were in hospitality, if you were in tourism, those were the places that had truly an outsized impact. And not only in industries, but in communities, there were specific challenges and problems that arose. So today, what I'm going to do in the next few minutes is provide just a little bit of a primer on really the two major pieces of federal support, one from 2020, one from 2021, one from the Trump administration, one from the Biden administration. They covered many of the same provisions and many of those same aspects, all with the same intent of how do you help individuals, industries that had been affected by COVID-19 to recover. As you listen to me and listen to our panelists who will join me, I hope you can keep in mind an aspiration that I think we should all have, which is that Milwaukee a few years from now be viewed as a model for how best to leverage these funds. There can be political arguments about whether or how much these funds should have been, but now they are here and they're going to be deployed over the next few years. And so how is it that we can become a model nationally for how you best use these and how we gain from these? Because if all we do, if all we aspire to do, if all we achieve is to get back to where we were in the spring of 2020, we truly will have gained nothing from COVID-19 and nothing from these federal resources that are coming in here. So we do have some work to do. So should I try this, Heather, or you want to do it for me?
Yes.
All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is just the first piece of legislation that was passed in March of 2020 was the CARES Act. Again, this was the immediate response from the Trump administration and a bipartisan group in Congress. The CARES Act provided overall $2 trillion in spending. Those going back, you can remember this was direct payments. It was the Paycheck Protection Program, the first one. And in this, and where I'll focus a little bit more, is on the $150 billion to state and local governments. There was lots of money flowing in a lot of different directions, but the central way in which Wisconsin received money was through what was called the Coronavirus Relief Fund. Wisconsin, as a state, the state government received approximately $2 billion through the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and allocation of these in Wisconsin was exclusively the purview of the governor and the executive branch. Not the way in every state around the country, but that was the way of it here in Wisconsin, much to the chagrin, as I'm sure you understand and have heard from the legislature in Wisconsin. In broad terms, with those immediate COVID relief dollars in 2020, about half of that, about $1 billion, was directed towards the public health response for testing, contact tracing, payments for public health at the local level, and about half went towards economic recovery. There's a couple of the programs here that are listed, about $200 million to local government, $125 million directly to small businesses, $50 million to farmers, $35 million to create a rental assistance program, $25 million for live music venues, for movie theaters, the hospitality industry, nonprofits got some of these directly. And all of these were really programs that we created out of whole cloth at the state level and moved these dollars out into the state as quickly and as efficiently as we can. I'm just showing you here, I'm giving you some brief overview, but there is a website through the Department of Administration at the state level. It's called the Badger Bounce Back. And this bubble drawing here represents virtually all of the programs that got some funding through the CARES. And when you go to the website and you click on one of those, you'll see even a finer grain distribution, what each county got, what specific organizations got. So there is fairly rich data on this that has been managed and is out there in the public domain. So I would invite you, as you have time or interest, to do this, because you also have some information at your seat. You undoubtedly, either your organization or you work with an organization already that has received these funds, and so there are opportunities for you to work with those organizations moving forward. So again, this is really a reflection of CARES. And with the CARES funding, at the beginning of the funding in 2020, they said, okay, you have to spend all this money by the end of 2020. So we had 9 months to get $2 billion out the door. At the very end of 2020, they said, well, okay, you can have a little bit more time. And they gave to the end of 2021 for some. But there really was an urgency around this and an urgency towards getting these dollars spent. Fast forward into the beginning of 2021, the incoming Biden administration, things had gotten better, but not as better to the extent that I think everybody would have wanted. And so the next thing that came out then, passed in March of 2021, was the America Rescue Plan Act. Spent about the same amount, $1.9 trillion, lots of the same priorities that were involved in the CARES funding. In this case, again, I'm going to most specifically focus on the $350 billion that went to state and local governments around the country. And in Wisconsin, in the state, that represented about $2.5 billion directly to the state of Wisconsin. So one thing that was different between the CARES and the ARPA, the mayor is not here today, but the city of Milwaukee did receive specific funding from the ARPA. The Milwaukee County did. 1,800 municipalities and local units of government around the state received direct allocations as well. So in addition to that $2.5 billion that went to the state of Wisconsin, about another $2.5 billion went to local units of government elsewhere around the state. So one of the single biggest things that the state did with CARES funding was to slice off about 10%, send it to local units of government. That didn't have to happen with the ARPA funding because they were getting their direct allocations. One thing I would say just in passing about the city, they got about $400 million, about $184 million from Milwaukee County. In the city of Milwaukee, as many of you know, a lot of that funding is going to really take care of budget challenges that the city has now and the fiscal challenges that come from the pension obligations that they have moving forward. It's a topic for another day, but we continue to have to talk about with the state legislature the need for the city to have the opportunity potentially to expand our sales tax, because those are dollars, and we're talking today about leveraging these dollars for some transformational change. In the city of Milwaukee, and not because it's this mayor's fault or not necessarily because of anybody's fault, because we're so overly reliant on property taxes, a lot of those dollars are going in to plug budget holes right now. So that's, again, a sidelight, but that's a lot of where the city is spending its money. So again, on the ARPA dollars, the allocation of these, solely the purview of the governor, the executive branch, and instead of a roughly 50-50 split that we had between public health and economic recovery, because of where things were and continue to be on the public health side, there was a little bit more that could go into the economic recovery than on the public health. There still was resources towards testing, contact tracing, all of those things, but it was about a 40-60 split, with 40% going towards the public health and 60% towards the economic recovery. State did a lot of the same programs we did under the CARES, but also in this time, and because of the way the funding came, also looking at programs that could be for longer term recovery, not just the immediate effects of COVID-19, but longer recovery. A couple of them are highlighted here. The Neighborhood Investment Fund spent about $230 million on capital projects all around the state that in ways that were affected by COVID-19, but could have some longer term impact beyond COVID-19. $100 million will go out in workforce innovation grants, healthcare infrastructure, some investment in broadband, which continues to be a significant challenge. I'll also just give you one example. There was about $25 million that was spent statewide on tourism capital grants. I don't know if the Symphony Mark applied for that, but I know Milwaukee area organizations did. There were about $250 million of applications for $25 million worth of funding. And so I tell you that just as an expression of there certainly is significant more capital need. There's a need for us to invest in those things moving forward, and there's opportunities for us to do that beyond where we are with the COVID-19 relief funds. But it gives you an example of the level of demand on some of these resources. So this slide just gives you a highlight of some of the ways in which and some of the programs that were created. There's probably 15 or so up here, and there's a whole host of them from minor league sports franchises which had seasons that were canceled, summer camps that were closed. It was trying to find those constituencies that were most harmed and getting some direct relief to those. And I would tell you, in 1,000 ways, we probably did, and I'm speaking from my old role at the state government, probably did a lot of things wrong in here, but it was all with an effort and a focus on getting these dollars out the door and trying to make sure that there was some tangible recovery. A couple of the ones that are highlighted here are going to be how I kind of finish my comments and bring my panelists up here. The Equitable Recovery Program, Diverse Business Assistance, Diverse Business Investment. Those are three specific programs that were created because with the COVID funds, with the ARPA dollars, There was also the ability to focus on equitable recovery, on neighborhoods, on particular communities that had an outsized impact from COVID-19. And so across these three programs, I'm not going to read exactly what they're for here because our panelists are going to talk about them, but it's a total of about $180 million across just these three programs, and about a little bit more than half to 2/3 of that is money that's coming directly into the Milwaukee community. It's going to nonprofits, it's going to community development financial institutions, it is going to places, in some ways, the Greater Milwaukee Committee is about a $1 million recipient. So they're directed towards the equitable recovery grants, nonprofits that are focused on eliminating disparities in areas like health, early childhood, economic support, diverse business assistance directed towards chambers of commerce, nonprofit organizations that provide funding and technical support, the diverse business investment to CDFIs for forgivable loans in areas that were disproportionately affected by COVID-19. So all of these are ways in which resources can get directly out to the community. As I mentioned, there's sheets of paper at your table. I think there were about 70 to 80 organizations just in this community alone that received that direct funding. So what we're doing today is bringing a couple of organizations here that have received those funds to talk about what they intend to do, what members of the GMC might do to assist and support those efforts, and what sustainability looks like about these. Again, with the ARPA dollars, they have to be obligated by the end of 2024, spent by the end of 2026. And so we know that there are resources here for the next few years, but what happens beyond that? How can we truly make transformational change? I hope you can understand I'm passionate about this. I'm passionate about it because I spent 2 years of my life on it, but I'm also passionate because I got to work with and see the organizations that were the recipients of some of these dollars, and I think we all have passion about making change in our community, and we have unprecedented resources. We've lived through these unprecedented times, and we have an opportunity to do some things and to restore some of the damage and do things that are changing, moving things forward. As I said, there are some who would argue that the federal government outspent or didn't spend enough based on, and we're saddling future generations. That in some ways is an ideological argument and maybe one that's useful for a different day. I hope you'll find the conversation as it goes from here to be intensely pragmatic, not ideological, about what are we doing, where are we going as a community, how are we investing these. The last thing I'll say before bringing up my panelists is we were operating, as I said, without a playbook on here. And from the state standpoint, really the work was get the dollars out the door. And the state will come back in a couple of years and make sure that those dollars got spent. We don't want the Inspector General from the Department of Treasury coming in and saying the state misspent these or you have to give the money back. So the state will spend a lot on that. And actually, WEDC is working on providing some technical assistance and accounting support and things like that for other organizations. But in some ways, and I don't blame them, but that's where the state's role ends. That's where the role of the individual organizations starts, and that's where I think there's a community role, a responsibility for how are we making the best investment here, how are we collaborating with organizations, fostering collaboration as a community to ensure that we get as far as possible. So with that, I'm going to bring up three of the organizations that have been recipients of this, ask you a couple of questions, and start moving forward. So I'd invite Mike Gosman, who's the president and CEO of Axe Housing, recipient of an equitable recovery grant of $1 million. Marjorie Rucker, who's the executive director of the Business Council and a recipient of the Diverse Business Assistance Program. I think Marjorie, $5 million, if I'm not mistaken. And then Yuli Herr, who's the business development specialist from the Hmong Chamber of Commerce. They were recipients of a Diverse Business Assistance and Diverse Business Investments Funds to the tune of $8 million. Before we even start, I would just say, because it's reflective of the work that we did, Marjorie was truly an example of someone who's a stakeholder in this, who almost helped to design this program. And yes, her organization benefited somewhat, but she was doing it on behalf of her constituency and her colleagues statewide. And that really is, I think, one of the great things that we have seen over the course of COVID-19 is industries standing up for their peers and their and their partners. So that's one area which, again, that's what we were doing with at the state level. So I'm going to have you each introduce yourselves. I think, Mike, do you have slides that you are using here?
I do. All right, we're ready to
Heather's
go.
got you covered. So we'll start with you, Mike Osmond.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks so much, Joel, and pleasure to be here. This is a full circle moment for me, too, like it was for Mark. I actually had my wedding reception in this room in 2008. And I don't think any of you were there. If you were there, it would be no secret that I was born with 2 left feet. The first dance was quite a dancing exhibition, the result of which was that the band had the good judgment to, in the middle of the song, invite everyone else to join my wife and I on the dance floor to save me from future embarrassment. I hope today goes better. It's a pleasure to be with you. So the organization that I work for, that I run, is called ACTS Housing, and the work we do is all around housing stability. Why is that important? Kids who live in stable homes, who have decent places to live, are twice as likely to be proficient in reading and math. Individuals that live in stable homes are 20% less likely to be involved with crime, including violent crime. The health outcomes of individuals who live in stable homes are also right around 20% better than those who don't, right? So stable housing is really important to our whole community. The portion of that work that we do is all about home ownership. So our organization has been around for 26 years. Over that period, we've actually helped more than 3,300 families purchase homes in the city of Milwaukee. Almost 1,000 of those homes were actually foreclosed properties that we've helped families reclaim. And the total investment that those families have made in our community is just shy of $250 million. So bigger numbers than I'm guessing most people would have thought. How do we do that? We provide services to support families who have barriers to home ownership and to help make home ownership possible for them. So it starts with homebuyer education, trying to get families ready, working with them on their credit, having an individualized plan for how they can take care of their debt, save money for a down payment to become successful homeowners. We also work with them to get the best possible financing that exists in our community, so they're getting a really good deal. Next step is they work with our real estate brokerage. We've got a team of realtors under our umbrella. Their mission is to serve families with low income to buy low-priced homes. And then for those families that are looking to take on and purchase and rehab a distressed home, we actually have a suite of services. We have home rehab coaching to help guide them through that process so that even a family who's never taken on a home rehab project might be able to successfully reclaim a distressed home. And we're the lender, because most banks aren't willing or aren't able to lend to families with modest income who are purchasing often city-owned properties. We actually are the lending source, and so we've got a $5.5 million portfolio of loans that we originate. Next slide. So what we discovered last year through an incredible program that the city of Milwaukee launched, it was a down payment assistance program. And the idea here was, the belief was there's lots of families who want to be homeowners, who can start with a homebuyer education organization like ACTS or others in the community, but they get stuck. And they get stuck because it's almost impossible to both improve your credit and save for a down payment at the same time. And these tend to be families who do not have wealth in their network from their families to help support them in their home purchase. Now, I won't do a show of hands, but I'll tell you personally, when I bought my first home, even as an attorney, I asked my dad for advice along the way because he'd bought multiple homes in his life. And my parents also helped me with the down payment. And I would guess for many people in this room, you may have a similar story. For the majority of people in our community, they don't have that as an option. And so the city of Milwaukee, using funds that they had, launched this program to provide down payment assistance to families who are earning less than 80% of the county median income and who are purchasing homes in the city of Milwaukee. The result of that program was that more than 100 families, just through ACTS Housing, actually received these down payment assistance grants. The typical family is a family of 4 earning $40,000 a year. They're now homeowners. And that disproportionately, and in a really important way, reached communities that have been left out of homeownership in our community throughout time, right? So it was 77% black families, 14% Hispanic families, 7% Asian families who actually leveraged those funds. The result of that investment at ACTS was that we had a 154% increase in black homeownership through our program year over year. And we also had an 83% increase in overall homeowners created through our program even in the midst of a pandemic. So when the state presented an opportunity for us to apply for an equitable recovery grant, instead of doing something new, we decided we want to do something that we know works, but we know there's not going to be money for forever, which is more down payment assistance so that more Black and brown families in our community who have access to homebuyer education can have some support when it's time to purchase their home. And so that's the way I'm going to start, but I am going to leave you. Let's go to that next slide. I tend to do lots of facts and figures, and I think that's important, and maybe also for this group. But these are some of the families that purchased homes with that down payment assistance just last year through our offices. And sometimes I think putting a face to the families that are benefiting from this type of offering, who are committed to making our city a better place, it might make it seem a little bit more real. Thanks so much.
Marjorie, go ahead. Just and as Michael said, not only what are you doing, a little bit about the organization, what you're doing, and is this something new, something different, or more of what you have done before?
Absolutely. Well, my name is Marjorie Rucker. Excuse me. I am the current executive director of the Business Council, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses specifically on helping minority businesses learn how to access supply chains. That's all we do. That's what we've done for 23 years. As a result of that, out of our 100+ members, we've produced about $400 million of spend between corporate partners in Milwaukee and minority businesses here in the state of Wisconsin since 2005, since we've been tracking. So that's exciting. The other hat that I wear through the Business Council is providing administrative services to the Ethnic and Diverse Business Coalition, which is the group that led the effort in helping to unleash some of the funding for a lot of the different chambers of commerce and other economic development partners through the diverse business assistance as well as investment grants. And with that, the work that we'll be doing is pretty finite. I told Joel when we were talking about this conversation, our money was spent right when it was awarded, right? We had budgets, we knew what we wanted to do. The Business Council and the work that it does through helping minority businesses to access opportunities, we will continue that work. We're actually going to be expanding our program. We've always focused here in southeastern Wisconsin. We'll actually be expanding statewide. So that's really exciting because our module will be able to help more ethnic and diverse businesses across the state. Through the Ethnic and Diverse Business Coalition and administering service to them, we'll be doing 3 things. For Ethnic and Diverse Business Coalition members specifically, we'll be providing a back-end platform to do the tracking. Like Joel said, I do not want to get a call from the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury, telling me that my reporting wasn't right or they don't understand how the money was spent. There are 15 different partners statewide that are a part of the coalition, so we'll be providing a platform where reporting will be uniform, everything can be on track, and they'll be able to pull that report, whether it's the report for these funds, for their ARPA dollars, or any other funding support that they're receiving. There's 2 projects that we'll be working on statewide. One was actually held or led by WEDC last year, and that is providing a back office platform for technical support providers. There are many of us across the state of Wisconsin that provide technical support to ethnic and diverse businesses here in the state of Wisconsin, but because we are in Wisconsin, we are also siloed, and I think that everybody in the room knows that, whether, no matter what industry you focus on. So what we will be doing is providing a new platform that anybody throughout the state of Wisconsin that provides technical assistance or access to capital, so whether that's a technical assistance provider like the Business Council all the way up to a bank, can participate in this. So when an ethnic or diverse business comes to you, if you are taking care of them, you'll be able to denote, what services you're providing and whatnot. If you are handing them off to another organization, being able to denote that. And the reason for that is, again, so that we can communicate on the back end and really be able to show how our businesses are moving through the pipeline, as well as being able to understand how these businesses are moving through the pipeline and making sure that they're getting what it is that they need. The third project that we'll be working on is a statewide directory. So I know that a lot of people that are looking for diverse businesses, especially now, right, because a lot of people are focusing on diversity and inclusion, and in procurement, they're saying they're having a hard time finding these businesses, right? No matter what you're looking for. So we'll actually be providing a platform or a directory that is a one-stop shop. So whether you're looking for a business by ethnicity, where they're located in the region, their capacity, their industry, their NAS code, you would be able to go and find that particular business and be able to reach out to them if you wanted to do procurement. So those are the projects that we will be working on with our money. All of the ethnic and diverse business projects that I just explained to you are new, with the exception of the work that the Business Council does, which will stay the same.
Go ahead, Yuli.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yuli Herr. I'm with the Moncton, Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce. And like Joel said, I am the business development specialist there. What we do at the Chamber is we're more of, what we do over there is we are a CDFI. And if most people don't know what that is, it is a community development financial institution. So we help the underrepresented and the underserved communities. With that, not only with the lending aspect of it, we also do technical assistance to kind of help people understand how to start up a business, you know, try to get some of these financial literacy, have them understand how to write, you know, keep track of their bookkeeping, and just write a business plan and do financial projections. The second part of that is also helping them with loan products that we have to kind of get their business off the ground. Most of the time, startup businesses are not the best, you know, a lot of lenders don't like to lend to startup, right? There's no financial history data, there's no historical data to look at. So what we could do is we come in and we look at it from a different lens, more so of just trying to figure out, we're a character-based lender, so a lot of times our clients are more high-risk clients. But they come with a dream and they want to fulfill that dream, and we try to make those dreams into reality, and that's where we come in and try to bridge that gap, okay? Not only do we give them a loan and then help them start their business, but we do the follow-up TAs. Ultimately, we want them to graduate out of our loan program and get into the mainstream banking, get into a traditional lender, and help them kind of scale up so they can go ahead and elevate their business. So with that, you know, we do a lot of partnerships as well. If you guys heard of the Brew City Match, we basically service a loan there. We partner with like Chase Bank, LISC, and Moncton, Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce. We service the loans that everything that comes through the Brew City Match. And Brew City Match is basically revitalizing all of the corridors, the business corridors like North and Fond du Lac, you know, in the Bronzeville area, Martin Luther King Drive, Cesar P. Chavez. And trying to just partner with a lot of the landlords there to have them have these vacant buildings and use them into the Brew City Match to revitalize our business corridors and get people back out there and beautify the city, essentially. And so we partner with a lot of people, just like the Eau Claire Chamber of Commerce as well, and really trying to make an impact through the state. We are a statewide organization. Maybe most people might not know that, but we are a statewide organization. And so we would love to be at every single community we serve all the time, but that's just one of our struggles for sure. And but you know, we love what we do, we love being in the community, and we love serving our members.
Great. So a question I have based on, you know, we've had a presentation today. I think everybody's going to walk away from here learning and knowing more about each of your organizations, hopefully a little bit more about CARES and ARPA. But I think, you know, we keep getting the charge, and I feel it from our members. What tactically can GMC members be doing about this? What can they do, you know, to partner with your organizations? What responsibility or what opportunity do we have? One thing I would note is that each of you were a recipient based on a competitive process. So you submitted an application, it was scored by civil servants within the state, and that's how those were forwarded. So this is not just like you were picked out of thin air and you can do whatever the hell you want with money. There is something to be done with it. But what is it that people sitting here, what is it that the community can do to partner, to leverage these funds, and to get more out of what we're doing with them? Why don't we start, Mike, with you?
Okay, great. Well, so I think the best place to start is probably with the Community Development Alliance. So the Community Development Alliance is a group. Teague Whaley Smith is the Chief Alliance Executive, former COO of Milwaukee County. And it's a group of stakeholders that over a period of years developed a comprehensive plan for housing in our community. It includes a ton of resident and neighborhood engagement, but also groups like the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, the Zilber Family Foundation, the City of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County all participated. And they came up with a really ambitious plan, and it's to reach equity in housing in Milwaukee. It requires us to have 32,000 new Black and Hispanic homeowners in Milwaukee, and also 32,000 more affordable rentals to families who are earning less than $25 an hour. And they didn't just create a plan, they actually went through the process of figuring out, okay, how do we get there over a period of years? It's not 1 year or 5 years, it's a period of decades. What do we need to be doing on an annual basis to essentially reverse the loss of 1,000 homeowners of color each year in the homeownership space that Milwaukee is losing, and turn that into gaining 1,000 homeowners of color each year? And so they've done something really unusual, I think, in this space, which is they actually started looking at all of the different programs that exist in the community, and then measuring the effectiveness of the programs based on how much of an input it requires to reach the output, and have based a plan around sort of prioritizing the strategies that are most cost effective so we have the biggest impact as a community. So I was thrilled to see that the GMC, whether you know it or not, is actually one of the signatories of the Affordable Housing Plan for Milwaukee, and I think engaging with that plan and engaging with the Community Development Alliance would be a great thing for this group. I would also say, and I showed the photos of some of our homeowners, I think until you actually see this work in action, it can seem rather abstract. So another thing that we do is we welcome leaders in our community to go on neighborhood tours, to actually tour homes and see the impact this can have on families, and we have 3 more tours this year. So that can be a good starting point if you're trying to figure out, okay, how can I or how can the GMC really connect to this effort?
I would say, depending on what your interests are, latch on to something. There's a ton of great stuff going on in the city, right? So I will just preface to say, whatever you're passionate about, please, please, please reach out to those organizations. I know many of you in the room already do, but please continue to build those relationships, specifically for the Ethnic and Diverse Business Coalition and for the Business Council. Of course, we love to have conversations. Of course, we welcome donation and checks, but we really want people to take the time to understand the work, not to the severity that we do, right, that are sitting up here, but really to understand why we do what we do and why it's important. Cultural relevance, especially when it comes to business development in all communities, especially ethnic communities and diverse communities, is more important than just following the model. And I think that when people understand that, they're more likely to engage and to understand and really partner with us in the work that we do.
Yeah, it's exactly like what Marjorie said. We really are always open to key stakeholders, partnerships. We're always looking for different expertise in different industries to really come join maybe the board over at the chamber and just kind of, help guide us to take our organization to the next level. We really want to make sure that we have all the opportunities and resources that we can use. So we're always looking for everybody to certainly come on and learn about some of our cultural barriers that we go through. And once you kind of understand that, you kind of understand how to and why we do the work that we do.
So Yuli, just picking up on that, you're open to new partners. Who are you partnering with now in the work that you do? And then talk a little bit about, you have these resources, a finite period of time to spend them. What does sustainability look like, and how do those partnerships mean something towards sustainability?
Yeah, so like some of our partnerships are like Wisconsin Business Development, who does our underwriting for our loan portfolios. So they help us out a lot. They give us a great discount and they do the work, and they've been doing it for years. And so having that sort of partnership really helps our organization. And as a nonprofit, we're getting discounted rates from them, and which really helps our community. So all that really goes back into the community and our members that we serve. Nothing really goes to the organization, but as far as sustainability goes, we definitely would love to kind of see how these sort of additional resources that we have can help. When the money is all said and done, we want to make sure that these money are being used to the best of its ability to make them go longer and reach further and be more sustainable as an organization. We even, we're looking at, incubator spaces to really kind of drive additional stream of income, but not only that, also help the community members as well to kind of give them that space where they can start their business and their entrepreneur, sort of journey.
Yeah, for me, I will say that as far as what's the first question?
Partners and then sustainability.
Thank you. Okay, so partners list is way too exhaustive, but anybody from a community-based organization all the way up to the public sector have partnered with us and continue to be strong partners. So I won't spend all of the time listing all of our partners. However, I will say this, for sustainability, a lot of people look at this infusion of cash and they say, oh, they're fine, right? And you know, they'll be okay. This money is really to participate in an equitable economic recovery for our communities, all communities that exist in the state of Wisconsin. So based on that, you know, we'll continue to do what we do, what we've always done as organizations, which is to reach out to partners, build those relationships, get, you know, funding to help leverage the work that we're doing, and then past 2024, 2026, when the money has to be expended, hopefully having enough money to sustain the operations for the programming that we're creating.
Mike?
Yeah, so I'm going to, I guess, start out by highlighting a failure that I think has led to a really good outcome. So pre-pandemic, we spent a lot of time going to schools, going to businesses, and trying to tell them and their employees how they could benefit from access services. We found we were spending a lot of time at tables, a lot of time sitting places, and it wasn't actually resulting in the new prospective homeowners starting our program. COVID forced, I think, all of us to go through a significant digital transformation. We've got a new way to partner with churches, schools, businesses that we've had a lot of success having just piloted, and we're excited to share with the broader community. So I'll give an example. One of our first pilot partners was AUG Prep. What we did with them is we created a co-branded landing page that essentially says AUG Prep is partnering with Axe Housing to bring homeownership opportunities to the families of our school. All they did in an email blast, they do a monthly email blast to all their families. We were a paragraph. That's all that the partnership has included so far, with a link to this co-branded landing page, right? Letting people know if you want to start your homeownership journey, click on this link and there's an on-demand orientation to get you going. We had, within a week of that email going out, 27 families who had clicked on the link and started our online orientation, giving us their email address, giving us their contact information. And we had 7 families who made it through the entire orientation and already had meetings scheduled with their homebuyer coach to begin their homeownership journey. We want to do this, and we're doing the same thing with Good City Brewing. They've got a 1% for Home initiative where they're supporting homeownership in the community, but also among their employees. And the idea here is it doesn't need to be a heavy lift for the business. If you're interested in letting your employees or your network know about this, we have this ability to create lots of partnerships very quickly. And then we can report to you quarterly on the progress. Because of the way they come in through our system, we're now able to know where are they at in the process, and where did they come to us from. Now, if you want to take that a step further, Red Gold Foods, which is an Indiana corporation, they actually provide down payment assistance up to $10,000 for all their employees who buy within a certain radius of their facility, right? So the idea here is at a time when it's brutally competitive to compete for talent, if you have a way of keeping the talent you have and helping them have greater stability in their home, they're likely going to be a longer term, stronger employee for your company.
That wasn't us cutting your mic. I think you just turned your okay, last question I have, and then we'll open it up if anybody has it. But barriers to success, whether it's with the ARPA dollars that you have now or your overall efforts. What are the pain points? What are the barriers that are keeping you from getting where we need to be? Marjorie, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't see anything as a huge barrier. I see it as an opportunity. We do need the funds. DOA is, since Joel, and it's all Joel's fault. No, I'm just kidding, since he left. But no, seriously, they're really backed up. So, you know, DOA, and he highlighted all of the programs that they're operating with these funds, but they're still on kind of the first tranche as far as issuing contracts or whatnot, and we're third in line. So, you know, we thought that we would be getting those dollars in, you know, around this time. We'd all be ramped up. We have our boots on the ground. That's not happening. We're probably looking at like early fall to have contracts and then to have some of our funding come in. So I would say that, you know, the barrier is really just kind of getting going, because, you know, that leaves us with 2 years for us to achieve it. And I can spend $5 million in 2 years, right? I got a consistent plan, but I do need those funds in hand for me to be able to do that work. The other thing I think for sustainability, again, is just helping to create those partnerships. I thank GMC for giving us the opportunity to be here today, but I really welcome the opportunity to, develop partnerships and relationships with many of you in the room today, just to learn more about what you're doing, what you want to support, and to see how we can best align with the Ethnic and Diverse Business Coalition or the Business Council. With that.
Yuli, how about you go next?
Yeah, so with some of the barriers that we're having is actually, part of the, where the funding is going with these ARPA dollars is creating capacity and putting more boots on the grounds in the communities we serve. And again, we're statewide, so we're trying to find people out in Madison, we're trying to find folks out in Eau Claire, Wausau, Appleton, Green Bay. And it's just really finding qualified candidates that does the work that we do. That's been in the economic development positions, these sort of roles, and just trying to find those that are engaged in our community and that can actually do the work. So that's just been some of the barriers. And then again, like Marjorie mentioned, we've been planning for this since we've been awarded, and we're still, the funds are not here in our account yet, but we've been awarded these funds, but we're operating as if the awards are, we already got the funding. So we're running very thin now on our plates, and we're running like 10 hats to everything nowadays. So we're really just waiting for those funds to really hit, and so we can actually get the programs that we propose for and get those out to our community members, who's been hurting and who needs these funding today. So those are some of the things that I think are barriers that we've been facing today. And again, sustainability-wise, it's just, we've been trying to use some of these funds to kind of help sustain the organization as well. Like I said, and try to figure out how we can make these dollars last longer. And because once we get the funding, 3 years from now, they're all going to be gone. We're already thinking 5-10 years ahead. How can we make these dollars last for that long, right? So with that, we do have programs in place. We're looking to certainly do forgivable loans as well. That's part of our proposal. We're looking to certainly do technical assistance, more entrepreneur boot camps, small business workshops, and we're really trying to get it out there so our community can get those access to those resources.
Mike, any other comments?
Yeah, so we're in the process of growing rapidly. So our goal is to help 2,026 families purchase homes in Milwaukee by the end of 2026. That's our 5-year goal. And it's 100% growth of what we were able to do for the prior 5 years. 2 big challenges that's presenting. The first one is space. We are moving to summer camp on Friday, which is the strip mall that Harley-Davidson is making available to us right outside of their headquarters, so that we can retrofit our building to make it a safe, good place for a larger team to work out of. The second is related to the current housing market. There are approximately 1,500 homes each year in Milwaukee that sell for $150,000 or less. Those are the homes that our families need access to. And in a typical year, 500 of those homes are being bought by investors, mostly investors who have no relationship to this community, live out of state or potentially out of the country. We're in the process, in partnership with the Community Development Alliance, of putting together an acquisition fund that's going to let us take 100 of those properties minimally annually that otherwise would fall into the hands of predatory investors and to make them home ownership opportunities. That is a big project for us to pull off, and it's stretching us in a bunch of ways. So I say this with a group of people: if you have smart people, or you're one of these smart people in this space, we'd love to get a little bit of your time.
We have a couple minutes if there are any questions from the audience. Anybody has anything that they wanted to bring up with any of our panelists? Betsy?
Mike just mentioned a goal of 2,026 homes by 2026. I'd be curious if the rest of you have metrics that you work with today that are goals for your organization, and with the ARPA funds, how will those metrics grow and change?
Yeah, we do have goals that we kind of set on a yearly basis, and to be honest with you, past couple of years, they've just been up and down, right? Because of the pandemic, we had to operate in a mindset where everything's ever changing. So our goals has always been changing, like on an everyday basis. But we have metrics where we want to make sure that we get out at least 15 loans to our members in the state of Wisconsin here to help them get their business off the ground. And also building more partnerships. And some of our goals, our loan portfolio is just went over a little bit over $3 million. But with that, we leveraged over $12 million to kind of, with a lot of these projects and businesses that are being started up. So we always are looking for goals to kind of increase that capacity and also trying to get more, folks out there in the community to be more intentional as well.
And with the ARPA funds, how do you expect that to change?
With the ARPA fund, it's really going to create, that capacity that we need to build because we only have a staff of 5, and we're serving the whole state of Wisconsin. And we do, with the Bruce City match, we do roughly about like 25 small business loans in-house. And most of that, sometimes we do our own underwriting. But then again, with WBD coming in with some of the larger loans, they'll do the underwriting for that. So we're wearing like multiple hats. So with the ARPA dollars, it's really going to be able to help us staff more properly so we can get things done more efficiently.
Yeah, for the Business Council, so our goal through our supplier diversity module and through our spend with corporate partners for our business members is always to see at least an increase of 20%. So we're looking to see a 20% increase in that spend year by year, and that is our metrics, and we've been pretty good. I think last year we only hit like 15%, so I was a little sad, but it's okay. I know where we're at, and we're recovering. As far as the Ethnic and Diverse Business Coalition, our goal is really just to see things kind of come together, right? Bring the people out of their silos, get us to communicate better, more efficiently, so that we're really making the best impact to make sure that we can help these businesses. Those ARPA dollars will help, obviously, with the programming that I talked about, with the hope and the goal that we'll actually have data in place, because right now, especially in communities of color, in the business communities, we don't have proper data. I don't care if it's Black, Asian, Hispanic. When you're doing the lift, and I see Wendy and team back there nodding their head, hey, Wibbick, but we just don't have that data, right? Nobody really cares to track it. So this is a way to kind of get that in real time and to really be able to tell the story, because we have it in front of us. We hear all of this, the despairing studies, right? The disparaging studies amongst most things between Black, brown, and white in the state of Wisconsin, but we really don't have any data point to point at when it comes to the economic wealth creation and generation in our city, and in our state for ethnic and diverse businesses. So our goal is to help produce that.
Anybody have one more question? With that, we'll close, but I wanted to
You want Theo?
Oh, Theo. Yeah. The question is, where is the state in getting those dollars out the door? If I still had my old job, I'd know this much better. But I do think that what the experience is here, I think a lot of the dollars have been spoken for and have been allocated. They haven't yet been distributed. I think that's where things stand right now. And I would say this about the same people who are administering all these funds in the state of Wisconsin are the people who do their day-to-day work as well. So you'll never hear me say a bad word about a public employee in the state of Wisconsin. They all had stuff piled on top of them, and to a person, every chance they had an opportunity to, they stood up and said, we can do this. So while it still will take some patience, and I think we continue to need to push on the urgency of this, the dollars are there, and hopefully places are continuing to operate in the way, as Yuli was saying, they're doing this on the expectation of these dollars coming, because they should be here very shortly. Again, that's it, but I would just tell you that we had a great conversation with the REI task force about these issues, and one of the next things that we will be doing is reaching out to those 75 organizations that you have in front of them, asking them what is it that GMC members might be able to do, as opposed to saying, here's what we think you should do with your money, or here's the opportunity to have, getting from them what insights that they might have for us to be able to find ways to make that connection and do that collaboration. I appreciate, again, your time and the work that you do. These are just a sliver of the work that's going on in housing and economic development in our city, but they're great partners of the GMC and great people to work with in the community. So thank you, guys. All right. Okay, Greg is waving at me. Greg says fill out the survey. There's one last QR code to finish, and we will not meet for the next couple of months, but please look for other opportunities that we will have for you to engage. Again, I appreciate all the work that everybody is doing, and have a great day. Thanks. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.